Well, hello. This is going to be a little bit of a different video, as you can tell by the title. I'm going to talk about why I quit drinking alcohol. I have been alcohol-free, sober for 8 years. It's kind of hard to believe all that time has accumulated. And if anyone is new to my channel, I usually do content on my life in Panama, but I wanted to address this topic partly because my new book is How to Quit Drinking Alcohol with ChatGPT, and also partly because I think when we're going on to create a new life for ourselves, a lot of that requires us to look at the habits, the patterns, the behaviors that we've had in the past. We all have those things that we know aren't probably the healthiest choices for ourselves. And I was thinking about, doing this video, and I was thinking how different my life here in Panama would be if I were drinking. It would be incredibly reckless. I can't even imagine like all the trouble that I would be in. Yeah, it just would not have been pretty. So the simple answer to why I quit drinking alcohol was that I didn't like the way it made me feel. Now, typically I drank because I liked the way it made me feel. That tipsy feeling, or a lot of times it was to kind of numb out or avoid feelings that were uncomfortable, feelings that I didn't know how to identify, emotions that I wanted to suppress, didn't want them to come to the surface. I don't even think I knew how to let them come to the surface and identify them and express them and release them in healthy ways. I really didn't learn that until this second time of getting sober. I kind of was learning about my own self-awareness and emotional intelligence after my divorce, when I started studying the power of the mind, and in an attempt to just not be like bitter and resentful for the rest of my life. And I did do a lot of work identifying emotions during that time, but I think the choice to fully become sober then kind of streamlined that process. So I had a kind of life-changing divorce back in 2010. My marriage ended very abruptly. If you want to read the before story, you can read that one. It's Wine, Sex, and Suicide, My Near-Death Divorce. That book is a journal about the dark night of the soul. And I was really a mess. And just for so many reasons, the dynamics in the relationship weren't healthy. I didn't have a healthy relationship with myself. I didn't respect myself. I put too much of my sense of value and worth as a person on what my husband's opinion of me was. I didn't really have autonomy. It was very much like kind of that 1950s mentality. Like, I saw him as, the primary person in the relationship, and I just, I'd kind of just acquiesce to what his wishes were, what his needs were, what his opinions were. So at that point, that was like very, very self-destructive drinking, very self-destructive. And then I started to get on my healing journey, and I started to build up my self-confidence. I started to build some autonomy, creating my own identity, looking into my psyche and seeing what beliefs that were mine, what were healthy, what were his, what were from the past, what did I want to let go of, what did I need to change mentally in order to move forward and create a new life for myself where I'd be happy. I had to examine what my values were, what my priorities were, what kind of life I wanted to live, what was important to me. Just, everything, like from the ground up. I needed to rebuild myself, make a new version of Patty. And so in that process, I knew that my drinking was a problem, but as anyone who's had any kind of addiction issues, you know that the first thing the addiction will tell you is, it's not a problem. It's because, like, for the drinking stuff, the justifications. Well, I didn't eat enough. Well, that wine must have been a very high alcohol content. I must be coming down with a cold. Maybe there's an imbalance, in my hormones, and that's why I got drunk or overdrank. So many justifications. And then I kind of started tracking on my calendar the times that I would overdrink without intending, like drank more than I had intended. Like if I said, I'm just going to have 2 glasses of wine. And then I started marking on my calendar the times where that didn't happen. And before I started using the calendar, in my mind, it was happening like once or twice a month that I was, drinking more than I had planned. Nope. It was once or twice a week. So that was very eye-opening. Plus, years prior, I won't even go into this because this will make this video way too long, but years prior, I got sober for the first time when I was 19. I started drinking alcohol at like 12, 13. By 14, it was excessive drinking. And back then, the pattern was to numb from emotional pain. My parents were going through a divorce. There was like stuff, going on at home. And I also think there was like a genetic predisposition in my biological family. So anyway, let's, fast forward to this time after the dark night of the soul and this really self-destructive and self-harm behavior. I was, starting to build myself back up, but still alcohol was a problem. And then one night when I overdrank, and in the morning, I felt so ashamed of myself. I felt embarrassed. I felt kind of like that unworthiness feeling. And those were the feelings that I had worked so hard to heal after the divorce. And I was kind of pissed. Like, no. If this is how I feel after drinking too much alcohol, it's not worth it to me, because I had built up my sense of self to be so strong. I had self-respect. I valued myself. And that was a hard-won battle. I mean, that took years. And so that was just the moment of my clarity, that realization that I'm not going to let alcohol get in the way, or anything for that matter. I am not going to let something get in the way of feeling good about myself. I'm just not willing to do that, whether it's a substance, a person, a job, a situation. It's non-negotiable. And from that point, I made a date to quit. I actually picked September 29th. That was my biological mother's birthday. And this was not far away from that date. It was like maybe a week or two away. So I chose that date to quit drinking alcohol. And I would say the first 6 months, they weren't easy. You know, I definitely had some like post-quitting anxiety because it was such a habit and it was a routine. And I did like that feeling of, you know, the buzz, the fun part of alcohol. But I'd proven to myself time and time and time again that that's not the kind of drinking behavior that I would do consistently. I might do that for a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, but at some point it's going to go back to the pattern of drinking recklessly, behaving recklessly, doing things that aren't really aligned with my values, my core values, because, you know, judgment is one of the first things to go when you're drunk. So I was pretty lucky actually in that I got to remove myself from my environment. I went to Romania. This was the second trip I'd done, and I was going to do my TEFL practicum, teaching English as a foreign language. And so I was gone for like 3 weeks, and that helped a lot. It got me through Thanksgiving, and then when I got back home, you know, there was still like some post-quit drinking anxiety, but I was able to manage it. And because by then I'd really been in touch with, you know, my emotions, my feelings, you know, my self-awareness was pretty high. I was able to handle those things. And from all my coach training and experience, I was able to do things that would help me get through those short times of, you know, feeling maybe a little bit anxious. So that was 8 years ago, and I just feel incredibly grateful to have the sobriety that I do. My life really would be very different. I wanted to mention this other book that I have written on. This is actually the shadow work bundle. So this shadow work journal is specifically for getting through heartbreak, breakups. It's to build back your self-respect, your confidence, you know, how to recognize toxic dynamics in relationships. You know, really it's a lot of work on healing. And this would be a great journal if you've gone through a breakup and you really want to get back to yourself. And also the pages are pretty, and you can use colored pencils to draw or whatever you would like. Anyway, that brings me to this most recent book, the How to Quit Drinking with ChatGPT. So ChatGPT wasn't around when I quit drinking, but I am on my, you know, self-publishing journey, and I like to write books that can help people. That's just, you know, that's my thing. I like to do that. A lot of people will publish on keywords, you know, specifically only. But so let's say that, raising baby goats was, everybody's searching how to do that. In this class that I've been taking, people will hire ghostwriters and write those books, but I can't do that. I need to write the book and I need to feel invested in it. And I like to write about life experience. And I used ChatGPT to give me a pep talk about my writing because I just was feeling discouraged, and I was amazed at the response from the GPT. It was incredible. It remembered like all the ideas I had. It, gave me a pep talk. It gave me some practical tips. It gave me some, creative ideas. It was really amazing. And I felt great after interacting with the GPT. So then I was thinking, how could that GPT be used to help people? And that's how the idea came about, to create a GPT to help with quitting alcohol. Because think about it, it's 24/7, right? You could type into that Chat GPT, and there's a custom one that I created. So there's an 8-section profile that people will create, and the custom GPT that I created has all of those pre-programmed. So you just have to go through and answer. But it's really amazing how this GPT can be supportive. In the moment, right? If you have cravings in the moment, you go to your GPT, and because it knows your history, because of the profile that you've given, it can give you very specific, personalized information, advice, tips, whatever you've programmed in. And it's compassionate. It's programmed to be supportive and compassionate. It's non-judgmental. It's going to meet you where you are and give you the support that is going to be most meaningful for you. It can help you track triggers. It can help you track patterns. You can use it for interactive journaling. It's actually really beneficial for that. So it'll go through and give you different prompts that you can journal about. I think it's an incredible tool. I know there's a lot of controversy about AI, but there's beneficial uses for AI, and I think my book is an example of that. I also have a book coming out in November that is the Fun Dry January journal. So that's going to be a fun kind of, for people who are sober curious about abstaining from alcohol. And that'll be a fun journal to work through. I also have a couple other books lined up for alcohol cessation, and I hope you'll check those out when they come out. Just wanted to share that story about quitting drinking. That's been my experience. If you are sober curious, I hope that you'll look into different resources. There are so many available. I know a lot of people AA may not be for them. Maybe they literally want to be more anonymous than going to a meeting, or they don't like the structure of it, or they don't like that it, mentions God. But there are other methods. There's like a SMART recovery method, and there's different apps online. And also, when you think about how poisonous alcohol really is for your body and your brain and your liver, it's worth looking into, especially as we get older. I mean, I remember, drinking like in my, 30s and feeling like, oh my gosh, like I feel horrible, after drinking too much. Whereas in, your teens or 20s, you have a lot faster recovery. So if you are sober curious, check out some resources. You can email me. I'm happy to be supportive in any way that I can. I think also by sharing my story, that's one way that I can be helpful to people. And if bibliotherapy is helpful for you, it's not an easy read, as you can tell by the title, Wine, Sex, and Suicide, My Near-Death Divorce. But I think it's a story that will help people not feel alone in that dark night of the soul. So thanks for listening to my story and about my books that I've written. And I hope that you make the healthy choices for your life that are best for you.